News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
And thanks for staying with us. I'm Don Ma. President Trump and the First Lady in a statement observed Holy Week, saying, quote, "As we focus on Christ's redeeming sacrifice, we look to his love, humility, and obedience." Continuing, the presidential couple says, quote, "We pray that America will remain a beacon of faith, hope, and freedom for the entire world, and for a future that reflects the truth, beauty, and goodness of Christ's eternal kingdom in heaven." Other U.S. lawmakers also marked Easter in their own ways. Vice President J.D. Vance writing on X on Friday that he went to church with his family in Rome and while there meeting with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called on all nations to respect the rights of Christians to declare Christ is King. And in the Vatican, the 88-year-old Pope Francis appeared during Easter Sunday Mass. He's been recovering from pneumonia. And let's head to Midtown Manhattan now, where Stefania Cox is soaking in the Easter festivities. Steph, what's the latest?
Hey, Don. Yeah, I'm right here at the Easter Bonnet Parade here in New York City on Fifth Avenue. It is such a gorgeous day. It is packed with hundreds and hundreds of people. You know, the parade route itself is pretty short, but the parade lasts for hours. And so people really are just milling around, checking out the sights. There is so much to see. As you can see, people have turned out in their Sunday best with an amazing outfit array. You can see here all kinds of themes and styles. We've got Salvador Dali. We've got a peacock. We've got an amazing portrait of nature. So let's start with you. Tell me about your outfit.
I'm supposed to be Mother Nature, so my kids helped me glue all these things on here. Took a long time, but it was well worth it. Very fun parade.
And what do you think of the parade?
Oh, it's wonderful, right, Victoria?
Yes.
Tell me about your outfit.
I'm supposed to be a flower.
Great, and you're doing so good at that. Hi, tell me about your outfit.
Hi, my name's Sophia, and I'm a garden flower fairy.
Love it. What do you think of the parade?
I think the parade is a great way to see so many fun, extraordinary costumes, and it's a great way to see people express themselves. I think it's really inspiring.
There is a lot of expression here. Speaking of which, look at this amazing outfit. Peacock, show us your outfit. Wow, that must have taken a while to put together. Love it. Thank you.
Hi. It took a while to collect the feathers, but I decided that this year is the year I can make it.
Great. Have you come before?
In the past 2 years. It's a wonderful tradition, and people are very creative.
Nice. Good to have you here. Hi, what brings you here?
Now, I came all the way from Toronto. I'm Toronto's top mascot chaser, and I came to take pictures with characters and ask people if they could be a cake, what kind of cake they would be.
That's the key question here we're all asking today.
Who would you be?
Right. Well, I'm going to have to think long and hard about that. I'll be getting back to you. All right. Hi, tell us about your outfit.
Yes, we are feeling very surreal today. I am Dali. This is Marguerite. Maybe you've seen us. We walked out of the MoMA today, thought we'd take in a parade.
For sure, as you do. Just another day.
You know. Hi.
Yeah, and what do you think of the parade?
It's amazing. Awesome. Oh my gosh, the creativity here, unbelievable.
And all smiles, and I would be an almond cake with raspberry sauce.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Awesome.
Good to know.
Yes.
Well, if there's one thing we know from this parade is that the spirit of New York is truly alive here. Artsy, bold, and totally unapologetic. Reporting in New York City, NTD's Stefania Cox.
So, Steph, so much creativity there, especially like the guy with the lady with the big cloud hair. That's really impressive. So much skill going into some of these costumes there. I need to know what her secret is, keeping all those fluffy stuff on her head, because I'm having trouble gelling my hair every day. I need to, can you talk to her a little bit later about what her secret is and get back to me about that? Okay, Steph, we're gonna go now. It looks fun out there. Thank you very much. And staying on Venezuela, the Chinese Communist Party provides a critical lifeline to oppressive regimes worldwide. NTD's Washington correspondent Luis Martinez dives into the link between the CCP and the authoritarian regime in Venezuela.
Nicolás Maduro in Venezuela, Vladimir Putin in Russia, and Ali Khamenei in Iran are at the center of brutal oppression in their home countries and in their respective regions. One of the main things that these three authoritarian oppressive regimes have in common is the financial, the military, and the technological and diplomatic support that they're receiving from the Chinese Communist Party. Now, in the case of the Venezuelan regime, atop of it sits Nicolás Maduro Moros, who has been indicted by U.S. courts under charges of narco-terrorism, and who, together with Vladimir Padrino Lopez, they lead the Cartel de los Soles, the cartel of the suns, named after the sun-shaped insignia that Venezuelan generals wear on their uniforms. Maduro has been accused of personally negotiating multi-ton shipments of FARC-produced cocaine, directed the Cartel of the Suns to provide military-grade weapons to the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, and coordinated with narcotic traffickers in Honduras and other countries to facilitate large-scale drug trafficking across the region. The Chinese Communist Party's support of the Venezuelan regime predates Nicolás Maduro. It was Hugo Chavez who led Venezuela into socialism and forced a single-party rule system. During his reign as leader of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez was the Latin American leader who traveled the most to China. And in between 2007 and 2017, the Venezuelan regime secured more than $60 billion in Chinese financing. And during that same period of time, the Venezuelan government bought more than $615 million worth of military equipment. Diplomatically, the Chinese Communist Party helped the Maduro regime gain a seat in the UN Human Rights Council, and the Chinese Communist Party has also used its veto power, the UN Security Council, to block resolutions demanding free and fair elections in Venezuela. And a recent Reuters investigation also revealed that Chinese telecommunications companies are assisting the Maduro regime in setting up its advanced citizen surveillance programs. During the past 4 years, the Chinese Communist Party has been financing the Maduro regime by circumventing U.S. sanctions on Venezuelan oil exports. We now know that Russia's Rosneft, their oil company, is helping Venezuelan shipments travel to Malaysian teapot refineries, where that oil is rebranded as Malaysian and sold to Beijing at discounted prices. Those shipments to Malaysia, though, now have stalled after the Trump administration ordered a 25% tariff on goods from countries buying Venezuelan oil. It is important to note that President Trump has invoked the Alien Enemies Act in response to the presence of Tren de Aragua, also known as TDA, cells here in the United States. Tren de Aragua is a foreign terrorist organization that works in conjunction with the Cartel of the Suns that is led by Nicolás Maduro, who in turn is financed and supported by the Chinese Communist Party. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
As the Trump administration ramps up efforts to remove illegal immigrants, some are reversing course, heading back to their home countries or elsewhere. Here's the story. Okay, looks like we don't have that report just now. Let's move on to NTD's international correspondent, Arian Pazdar, joining us now live from Latin America. So, Arian, how serious is the impact these gangs are having on the United States?
Hey Don, good to see you as always. Look, these gangs are spreading. Now, just to add real quick, these gangs are spreading and the Trump administration is cracking down on illegal immigration, which includes these gangs. I think that's very necessary, and that's because these gangs are spreading across various countries. Now, we have MS-13 from El Salvador and we have Tren de Aragua from Venezuela. One of the main issues is how these gangs make money. One of the ways they make money is human smuggling, which is of course terrible for the victims, right? Because they often face violence, rape, and even death in some cases. But it's also bad for the United States because it raises the number, it increases the number of illegal immigrants entering the country. Another way these gangs make money is drug trafficking. Just this month, Trump administration officials announced that they seized $500 million worth of narcotics off the coast of Florida. Now, Don, just imagine how many Americans could have died because of those drugs. So these things are happening, and just on Friday, President Trump again talked about the need to stop it. Let's take a look.
Gang members, drug dealers pouring into our place. And you know what? Our people voted for me to get them out. They want them out. They want them out. And we've done a hell of a job. And by the way, Ecuador and various places, but El Salvador, we've been helped by a lot of other states.
So we just saw President Trump, and just to add real quick, Don, these gangs, if nothing is being done to stop them, then they start spreading to different countries, which is actually already happening.
Right, Arian. And we also just saw President Trump talking about Ecuador, which is a country we don't usually hear that much about. Can you talk to us what's happening there?
Right, Don. So Ecuador just had an election exactly 1 week ago, and the incumbent right-leaning president won this re-election by a whopping 12 percentage points. One of the reasons he won is exactly gang crime, which was or still is pretty serious in Ecuador. There was one example which was pretty scary, an incident where armed gang members took over a public TV station. I mean, look at this. They stormed this public broadcaster, they stormed the studio as the anchor was live on the air. And Don, these things are not just happening in Latin America. You might remember last summer when violent gang members took over a residential building in Colorado. And look at those pictures. This looks like it might be Latin America, but it happened in Colorado. Now, just this week, the Trump administration allocated 600 miles of the southern border to the army, and those troops will be stationed there heavily armed. Now, Todd Bensman, who's a senior fellow with the Center for Immigration Studies, he tells us that these American troops might have to defend themselves amid attacks from such violent gang members. Let's take a look.
And if they do fire back, it will be with overwhelming firepower. You've seen those Stryker brigades down there. They've got the 10th Mountain Division down there, the U.S. Army.
Right, Don. So there you see there are a number of threats which the United States is facing. It's human smuggling, it's drug trafficking, and it's even violent takeovers. Don?
All right, Arian, thank you very much for the report. As the Trump administration ramps up efforts to remove illegal immigrants, some are reversing course, heading back to their home countries or elsewhere. Here's the story.
These passengers are part of a movement of migrants, reversing their journey and traveling back south amid U.S. President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. Among them are Venezuelan migrants. Yefer Alejandra says she never reached her destination.
It was sad, but I gained experience. But I came back sad because I wanted to reach the United States, but I couldn't.
Wilson Duarte and his pregnant wife said they made the decision to leave New York after receiving a deportation order. They're traveling back to Duarte's hometown of Caracas.
We couldn't stay in the U.S. and we had to come back. The sea is strong, so I don't recommend it. I'd rather go through the Darien jungle as I did on my one-way trip, as you can take a rest if you're exhausted. I came by boat and I vomited as I got dizzy, and the guy couldn't stop as an accident could happen.
In the coastal city of Puerto Abaldia, migrants spend the night before taking another boat to La Miel. Once there, Venezuelan migrants cross on foot into Colombia, as they can't be sent back to Venezuela from Panama because of the absence of diplomatic relations between the two countries. But not everyone plans to go back, like Anderson Estuary.
I am Venezuelan, but my goal is Ecuador, as I have nothing in Venezuela. I have nothing to find there. So, my goal is Ecuador and work there. I have worked in Ecuador and it was good.
Coming up, we speak with an energy expert about President Trump's energy priorities, their potential impact on the economy, and how they stand to benefit American families. Don't go away.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time, for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income, with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
And joining us now to discuss President Trump's energy plans is Mark Eng, Advisory Board Member of Americans for Energy Dominance and President of Asian Industry B2B. So good afternoon, Mark. How would you describe Trump's energy strategy and how does it contrast to the Biden administration's?
So I'm actually really excited about his policy because I think all the moves he's making has been pretty common sense. And for example, there's been some controversy in the last week regarding the green lighting of a Montana solar project. I don't know why that's an issue, but back in the Biden administration, they actually put this very important project on hold. And I think it took, the Secretary, Doug Burgum, to address that, because that's kind of in his region, in the Mountain West, where there's a lot of sunshine, and it makes no sense that that would have been held up. And it's actually helping a lot of Native American communities up there. I'm super excited about that. Another controversy was the stopping of a bunch of costly wind farms in New York. And one of the things that of course, the mainstream media wants to say, oh, Trump's, pulling the plug on some of these projects. Some of these projects are very wasteful. So, for example, I built my own residential solar system, and I live purely off the grid, 75 panels, 20 batteries or so. I do have a wind turbine, and I understand that wind turbines actually are not reliable because every day the sun comes up, but the wind doesn't blow every single day. So in the end, you have something that's good for supplemental, but should not require billions and billions of dollars being put in it. That reeks to me of political favoritism from the Biden administration. So Trump's making all the right moves.
Okay, Mark, if I'm not mistaken, you've said before that Trump's energy policy isn't about ideology, but rather it's about results. What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. Just like I said, bottom line is we need to get production up, right? So I don't see Trump playing favorites with certain types of alternative energies. He's actually looking at what makes sense, probably from a fiscal perspective, from an ROI perspective. What money are we putting in, and how much energy are we getting out of it? And that seems to be the line of reasoning for the different moves he's made the last few months in his administration. Everything I see so far has made sense to me from a on the ground person that wrangles with the different types of energy. I certainly see that the moves he's made has made sense.
So the residential solar project in Montana received Trump's backing. What made that project a better fit in terms of cost effectiveness and impact on local communities? Because you're saying that the sun comes up, right? The sun comes up every day, but it's not always sunny.
Yeah, I really like that because there's a lot of misconceptions that the sun needs to be at full force to get the production you need. Of course, when the sun is low and it's not a lot of it's not very bright, it's partly cloudy, you still get production. So in that sense, if you can forecast your production and figure in those low light days, it works. But most importantly, what I think President Trump is doing is empowering residential solar, which I think is huge. That's something I, in my position, really am pushing the community to do, because at the end of the day, you're fighting big utility companies. So, for example, I'm in Southern California, and Southern California Edison has been providing less and less service for more and more money each year, raising rates. Power outages are, all-time high. These type of things where when residents can take that back, or even they don't have to go fully off grid like I have, but they can all do supplemental backup power. That goes a long way. Do families really want their food spoiling in the fridge because there's an outage for 12 to 24 hours, which seems to be commonplace? One of my colleagues at work, he actually had to huddle with his family on a winter day on a night when PG&E had to, do an outage. I mean, these type of things are really Trump's dedication to helping families on the ground. So residential solar, yes, empower that.
Okay, when we're talking about whether it's solar panels or wind turbines, a big cog in the machine is China, right? So I want to ask you, how does Trump's plan support domestic manufacturing and energy?
So I think a lot of, for example, there is an exemption in the tariffs right now for critical minerals. So lithium obviously is the biggest mineral required for batteries and off-grid storage for energy. I think a lot of the tariffs, obviously it's a geopolitical decision for what's going on right now in terms of these economic policies. But I think the overall goal for this administration is to get more domestic production going. And we're certainly seeing that. We're certainly seeing more of a desire to start bringing some of the production here domestically, friendshoring some of these to other countries that are not China. And so I think in the end, the market will work itself out, and you're going to see much more production here and more of a demand for batteries, panels, solar controllers, all of the components that go into making a system due to this overall policy by Trump.
Okay, just one last thing. Do you feel that Trump's background in the private sector, does that help him in his energy policies, energy agenda?
Absolutely. Real estate development is obviously Not everyone has that skill. Our president has years and years of that background. And a lot of the commercial solar farms, the commercial wind farms are projects that involve quite a big swath of real estate. So anyone who's ever driven from Los Angeles to Las Vegas knows there's that huge solar farm out there right on the state line. These type of things, Trump also has a good idea about how much this costs. And therefore, if he sees something that is not exactly cost efficient or doesn't make sense financially, and like I said earlier, reeks of political favoritism from an administration to certain companies or certain sectors of an industry, he's going to ixnay that and put in things that make sense, like the Montana Solar Project.
Well, all right, Mark, that's our time today. Thank you again for coming on.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Coming up, mental health in the spotlight in New York City. Mayor Eric Adams comes out in support of involuntary commitment of the worst off mentally ill. We'll speak with a psychiatrist for insight right after the break.
What if kids in America didn't have to go to bed hungry tonight? What if our moms, dads, and grandparents could put healthy food on the table every day to help us grow strong? What if all of our friends and neighbors had fresh food too, and there was no hunger at all in America? And what if there was a way today for you to help? Call now or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. So many of us don't have enough food to eat, but your monthly gift means families across the country and in your community can fill plates with food. Kids can get healthy meals year-round, even when school's out, and our neighbors can have fresh food. Food that moms, dads, entire families need to thrive. But right now, more people are facing hunger. Feeding America works from coast to coast with partner food banks, food pantries, and meal programs. It takes all of us to make that happen. Will you help too? Please call the number on your screen or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give just $19 a month, and we'll send you this free canvas grocery bag. It's our way of saying thank you for helping to end hunger for our neighbors. Because no kid, no mom or dad, nobody should go hungry in America. Nobody. So what if today was the day you could help nourish futures for our friends, our families, for all of us? Ending hunger is possible. What if we end it together? Call or give online today at helpfeedingamerica.org and your gift can be doubled. Thank you.
My mom and dad were traditional Asian parents. Now my father would go to work before I woke up in the morning, and then he would come home too tired to play with me. I tell my son, I love you every single day. I love you. Now my dad has never said that to me. Not because he doesn't love me, but because culturally it wasn't comfortable for him. So I teased him the other day and I said, how come you never say that to me? And he said, you're too old now. Now that he's a grandfather, he says, I love you to my son every time he sees him. My advice to all the fathers out there, forget the material things, forget the cultural restrictions. They grow up way too fast for you to waste even a single precious minute or moment.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Homeschooling in America has surged, especially since the pandemic. About 5% of school-age children now learn at home, and nearly 1 in 10 parents are considering it. What's driving the trend, and what are the trade-offs? To discuss, NTD's Stefania Cox sat down with Sam Sorbo, author of Parents' Guide to Homeschool, and Stacey Schultz, former teacher and New York City Department of Education school leader.
And now for parents out there grappling with this question, how and where to educate their children, we'll start with you, Stacey. What are the most pressing factors that they're considering?
I think they're considering where their student will learn best. I think that's what all parents are trying to consider when they think about where schooling should happen. I think when you consider the pros of homeschooling, you consider the things of individualized learning, right? You consider the flexible setting that students might learn in, perhaps the lack of stress depending on the student and their mental health. But when you're thinking about the opportunity for public school or going into a school setting, there is naturally built-in socialization. You have access to more diverse perspectives. You have a more controlled environment as far as you have the teachers who are certified, often highly certified in their specializations. And so those things are really important. And when you look at some of the testing that's out there, there's a couple things that I'd love to dive into, but I'm sure we're going to get to that.
For sure. And I want to take that question to you, Sam, as well. What are parents looking for in what you've experienced?
Well, from my experience, parents don't actually realize what they're looking for. They think they're looking for education, but we don't really have a good operating definition of education because we've been schooled for so long. And of course, school is the grand experiment. It's only been around for a little over a century. All of the time leading up to that, including the founding of this nation by the founders, was homeschooling. It was accomplished at home, all the education. And a few of the founders actually went to college, but that's after they taught themselves Greek and Latin at home. So the idea that we think we know what education is when we are now 40th in the world, our test results are sinking every year, plummeting, in fact, and we still are sending our children into these institutions that are failing to adequately educate them, even by their own standards, because the institutions are lowering their standards so that they can claim proficiency and then not achieve it, is really quite remarkable. Our institutions are really the only business model where they adjust their metrics to meet their results instead of showing that their results don't meet their metrics every year.
Now you've honed in on or suggested some of the drawbacks of the traditional schooling method, and I'll start there. If you want to dig into that, we're of course going to look at both the pros and cons of both options, so people can really think through this. But Sam, if you could just lay out what you think is the issue underlying what you've just pointed to.
Yeah, well, the school paradigm, unfortunately, takes learning away from the child. It removes learning from the child because the moment that the child steps into school, the child is told to sit down and shut up. You're not allowed to ask questions unless you have permission to ask a question. And that in itself is a barrier to learning. So they can't actually propose that they teach when they prevent the child from learning from the moment that the child enters the school. The next paradigm is that the teacher is the spigot of knowledge. The teacher has all the knowledge, and you must go to the teacher for the knowledge. And of course, we know that to be completely untrue. You can learn anything you want on YouTube now. You can open a book and read it. But the paradigm in school is, you know what, the teacher read the book. She'll tell you what's in it. Just regurgitate for the test what you've been told. And all of these are ways of shutting down learning. The problem that we have now is that we've been enslaved to our schools. And yes, I'm using that word, but it's apropos because the number of parents who say to me, I couldn't possibly homeschool. I wouldn't know what to do. And I look at them and I go, but you graduated high school. In theory, you should know how to educate a fourth grader because you graduated from that system that taught you everything. But they know themselves that they didn't learn anything in the system. And yet they're still willing to put their children into the system that made them feel so inadequate. And that's unfortunate. So parents really need to take a step back and think about what their goals are for their children, not just think about the word education, but the overall goal. What is the goal that they have for their child? They want their child to become a citizen of this nation, a contributing member of society, and all of those things. Okay. It's not just about the academics. And if it's just about the academics, the schools fail miserably.
And Sam, I do want to get into the benefits of homeschooling as you see it, but I'm going to turn now to Stacey. Your response, potentially to the criticisms that were just laid out and the benefits as you see it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's an antiquated model that Sam is pointing out, this idea that the teacher is the sage on the stage, right? They're the knowledge holder. They do all of the instruction. Really, teaching has become much more interactive. And Sam pointed out to the fact that there are so many more technological advances that give access to students doing something like a flipped classroom, doing some of their knowledge gaining at home. When they come into school, what's so important about learning is that it's socialized, right? There's an important aspect that we miss out on that we don't always talk about, that learning is socialized. So when we engage with others about the things that we think we know or that we're learning about, we actually learn how to think about them differently. In school, we have a lot of opportunity to apply them. And there are critical explorations. There are different kind of investigations that happen in school that allow students to apply their knowledge in a variety of ways with a lot of different thinkers.
Okay.
And so I think some of what Sam is saying is antiquated in teaching and learning now.
Okay, and we just do have a couple of minutes left, so I want to just get from you, Stacey, briefly, any of the drawbacks that you see in this traditional schooling system?
I mean, I think as I pointed out at the top, when you asked what are parents considering, I think sometimes the learning environment might be overwhelming for students. And so being in a school where you have lots of different students around you sometimes can be anxiety producing. It can take away from how student might learn depending on their sensory. But what I want to say is schools have gotten better at recognizing that and putting in a variety of interventions that help students. Like, some students might come into a flexible learning environment. So they'll learn in a smaller environment for part of the day and into a larger environment the other part of the day.
I hear you. And Sam, finally, just looking also at the potential drawbacks or challenges associated with homeschooling, but also give you a chance to respond to Stacey's assertion that learning is more socialized in traditional schooling methods.
Sure. Let me respond to Stacey first. I mean, she has the unenviable position of defending a system that clearly is failing. And to then fall back on this idea that learning is socialized is absurd. There's absolutely no proof for that. And in fact, if there were proof for it, then maybe the schools would be more successful, but they're not. So unfortunately, the schools really don't have a leg to stand on at this point. The idea that children get socialized in school itself is antiquated. The only reason that we believe that children get socialized in school is because that's the only opportunity we give them. But when people meet homeschoolers face to face, they are always shocked at how socially adept homeschoolers are, how incredibly mature and poised homeschoolers are, as opposed to children who are institutionalized every day of their lives. The fact remains children need their parents. We adopted this idea that children don't need their parents as a way of justifying school. But now the model of schools cannot be defended on academics alone. And we have to go back to, well, maybe children need their parents, which is where I stand. Learning happens at home. It begins at home, and it should continue at home. And parents are infinitely capable of seeing to the education of their own children without government intervention.
Sam, thank you so much for that. And I'll just give Stacey a moment to respond. We just have a few seconds left.
Yeah, I just want to respond to the fact that Sam said there is no evidence for that learning is socialized. There is actually a lot of evidence, a lot of publications, a lot of theorists. When you study education, it's one of the things that you study. And one of the other things I want to point to around homeschooling is that there's a lot of flaws in the methods of the research that's done that points to the benefits of homeschooling. And there's also a lot of lack of oversight. Also, a lot of times parents who are opting in to doing homeschool don't recognize the high level of commitment and finance, et cetera, that is necessary to truly homeschool their child in a way that would meet the public school standards.
Thank you so much for both coming on this morning to discuss with us this, of course, very important topic. Great to have you both. Sam Sorbo, Stacey Schultz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, mental health in the spotlight in New York City. Mayor Eric Adams comes out in support of involuntary commitment of the worst off mentally ill. We'll speak with the psychiatrist for insight after the break.
I'm Amy Grant, and I want to talk to you from my heart about the heart. I would have been the last person on the list to say this woman has a problem with her heart. So no, there was nothing about my life that said, you have a ticking time bomb in your chest. But I did. I wound up in the office of a cardiologist because I was there with my husband. And at the tail end of that, the cardiologist looked at me and said, I want to see you. No one was more surprised than I was to learn I was living with a rare heart condition. He said, Amy, this condition, you'll be fine, and then catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life. And I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. That's why I'm asking you to join me and become a monthly donor to the American Heart Association. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. If this could happen to me, it could happen to anybody. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, but your support can save your life or the life of someone you love. Give $19 a month with your credit card and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives like mine. I'm grateful for the American Heart Association. Their research gave me more time to do the things I love with the people I love. So listen to your heart. I'm here today because I did. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor and help save even more lives. Thank you.
Mental health treatment is in the spotlight in New York City. Mayor Eric Adams penned an opinion piece last week supporting involuntary commitment of the most severely mentally ill. Adams argues in the New York Post that not intervening when someone can't care for themselves is actually more inhumane. Meanwhile, state lawmakers are reportedly coming closer to approving Governor Kathy Hochul's plan to expand involuntary commitment. That's the process through which mentally ill people are admitted to psychiatric facilities against their will. NTD's Stephania Cox spoke to Dr. Mina Mirholm for more. He's a board-certified psychiatrist and assistant professor of psychiatry at Columbia University.
Welcome and good to have you with us, Dr. Mirholm. What is the clinical rationale behind involuntary commitment, and how do we determine when someone is truly unable to care for themselves?
Well, good morning, Steph. Thank you for having me. This has definitely been an ongoing discussion in New York City, as it's become an undeniable reality that every time we're walking around, we do see somebody who is struggling. And one of the criteria, as Mayor kind of pointed out in this op-ed, is that when folks are not able to care for their basic needs, food, shelter, medical care, that's one of the areas that we look at when we say, can a person here objectively look at what they need and provide for their own care. And then when they're not able to, oftentimes we'll find that medical needs are neglected, and something from a simple problem medically can even compound and become much worse because they're not in a psychiatric headspace to be able to look after their own needs. Sometimes this may not look as an imminent or an immediate medical care need, but it does wind up putting an individual in a place where, this is one of the reasons why life expectancy is diminished significantly with folks with serious mental illness.
And it does look like, as I said in the intro, that New York City could be coming closer to expanded involuntary commitment. And that's supported apparently by New Yorkers, the mayor citing a poll there of 90% of New Yorkers supporting that expansion of that program for the most mentally ill. But how much do you think public opinion should really weigh in on these kinds of policies?
Well, when it comes to public opinion, it gives us a sense of the reality on the ground, right? This is a sense of urgency that all New Yorkers, because they're moved by compassion and saying something here has to change. This is not right. But we have to balance public opinion with a clinical compass and saying, well, what is the ultimate goal here, right? Because involuntary commitment is sort of the door of the problem, but it can't just be the be all end all. Because what we see is on a daily basis, I see patients coming into the emergency room that do meet criteria for involuntary commitment. And if we expand that, we'll have more of those patients and we commit them into the hospital. But we also know that that's not the end to the problem. Is once somebody's stabilized in the hospital, now we have to begin the real work to prevent the same cycle of saying, well, now you're going to be discharged into the community, either in the jail system, in the incarceration system, or back in the hospital. Again, we have to have the long-term plan, not just the short-term solution.
Yeah, what does that look like to you? Adams had pointed to mobile crisis teams. New York City does have a Bridge to Home program. There are things in place. Is it enough? And what do you think really needs to be done?
Well, this, I think, is one of the most hopeful pieces of this article. With that $650 million commitment, and we see the commitment from Governor Hochul, which is essentially very groundbreaking, really, as far as where other states are and the commitment of resources being allocated, because we have to look at the continuum of care. We have to see the individual in their moment of crisis and see how we can connect them to care, connect them to housing. Care really for a person who's struggling with a serious mental illness and homelessness needs roundabout, needs 360 kind of level of care. And that's why these resources, as far as someone respond in crisis, having someone connect to appropriate care from a pharmacological standpoint, medication, housing, looking at sort of the spectrum of care is a hopeful element that we're seeing is going to be an expansion of this resources are available for folks, which I think is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, Adams is pretty adamant that this is the compassionate move, and it seems like there are plenty of other lawmakers in New York City feel the same way. But there are critics that feel that this actually could be a civil rights violation, could re-traumatize people by taking away their autonomy. Is there a chance that this could be misused? Where does medical ethics fall on that?
Yeah, this is definitely a nuanced part here, Steph, because what we're balancing is, on the one hand, taking away someone's right to be able to live the way that they feel is best is a sacred thing for us in the medical ethics community. And we have to have a high bar to be able to do that. While at the same time, if drowning, you're not going to wait for them to raise their hand and say, now I want to accept help. Or if somebody is walking in front of traffic because they believe in their mind truly that they are invincible, you don't want to allow them to do that and say, there's a phrase that we have in the sort of the medical ethics literature and psychiatry of folks are dying with their rights on. In the effort sometimes to protect people's rights, we may allow them to be in a place that's dangerous. But on the other hand, we don't want this to be so expanded that it can be misused for folks who are already marginalized, folks of color, that they can be almost targeted by this as well. So as long as we're keeping our sort of gold standard here, which is to do no harm, to prevent harm for folks, be our guiding light in this conversation.
And many other states do already have involuntary commitment for non-dangerous criteria. What do you think that New York City can learn, or New York can learn from those states and what they've applied so far?
Seen great programs, especially in Arizona, Washington State, diversion programs, essentially, when someone is either responding to a crisis and instead of being taken to a facility for incarceration, the jail system, for example, because 1 in 5 individuals who are facing incarceration actually are seeing serious mental illness. So oftentimes these programs that have existed in other states, it's not only just the involuntary commitment piece of, but of saying, how do you prevent folks from going to the wrong place and diverting their care into the right place, making sure that somebody winds up getting help, and instead of now being in a place where they are either committing a crime or they're in the forensic facilities, that they can instead be treated with compassion and care and get the right kind of treatment for what they need. That's something that we're learning from a lot in New York State overall, of figuring out, A, what would be the expansion of this criteria that we can see the humanity of it, but then B, how do we make sure folks are getting to the right place?
A delicate balance and an important line to walk. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Mina Merham. Good to see you, as always.
Likewise, thank you for having me.
China's factory owners fear the good times are coming to an end. Chinese online retailers Shien and Timu are popular in the United States. Now they warn they'll increase prices over the impact of a trade war globally. This could reduce demand and create challenges for China-based producers. Here's more.
The days of cheap Chinese goods by post are coming to an end for US shoppers. Shien and Timu have warned they're going to raise prices from April 25th. In near identical letters to customers this week, they urged people to buy now at today's rates. The online giants had grown big in large part thanks to the so-called de minimis rule, which allowed them to ship low-cost goods to the US free of all duties. That loophole will now close from early May under an executive order signed by Donald Trump. While that spells higher costs for US shoppers, it also means pain for the army of Chinese firms that supplies Shien and Timu. Reuters reporter Casey Hall visited some of those companies on a trip to Guangzhou in southern China.
We visited a number of these so-called Shien villages, which are home to thousands of suppliers for the ultra-fast fashion retailer. The mood there was pretty glum because a lot of the suppliers there have seen their orders cut. Some told us that their orders have been cut by up to half this year.
Besides cancelling the de minimis rule, Trump has also ramped up tariffs on Chinese goods to 145%. Shien could potentially dodge these duties by shifting more of its output to Vietnam, which faces lower US duties for now. In Guangzhou, some factory bosses said Shien is doing exactly that, though it's a move the company denied in a statement to Reuters. And even if production does move, it may be no quick fix, as Shien's business model isn't just about rock-bottom production costs. It's also about ultra-fast reaction to consumer tastes.
A little known fact about Shien's success is that it's built on this amazing Chinese supply chain. So they told us 7,000 suppliers in China. Many of them are small, nimble, agile factories that can produce thousands of styles every week in small quantities and quickly scale them up if they become popular. The problem for Shien is if they move their supply chain to Vietnam, it is not as well established, it's not as efficient as the supply chain in China. That means that it'll take them longer and possibly be more expensive for them to produce there, which for them in a industry which is so reliant on being fast and on being cheap is a big problem.
Dresses are currently priced at between $6 and $91 on the Shien website. They start at an even lower price on Timu. Now the question is just how much of an increase US shoppers will be willing to tolerate.
And that's all for NTD News today. Thank you for tuning in for round-the-clock original news coverage. Watch us live at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app.